Welcome to another riveting, maybe X-rated edition of Risk and Return. I'm Charlie Gasparino from Fox Business, Fox News, and the columnist for the New York Post. I'm here with my partner in crime, the daddy of data, Bob Sloan from S3 Partners, who is on a wicked winning streak, I must say, with his bold prediction last week of the bounce back in software stocks, essentially calling the bottom to the route in these stocks that it's inspired by all things AI taking over the world. And I can tell you, there's a lot of nervous investors out there that are what's known on the street. I use this because it's a street term, as balls deep into companies like Oracle and you name it, all those software stocks that got crushed, and are really worried that all this money that they threw into these stocks has been wasted because about 5 or 6 AI companies are now going to rule the world. I think Bob, gave everybody a little bit of, he's been around for a while. Okay, take a deep breath. Let's look at this more coherently, and we will do that in a moment. Bob, thank you. That was an amazing call. Let me ask you this: how do you come up with stuff like that? I mean, is it just purely in the data? It's got to be in the back of your head. It's got to be, you've been on the street for years. I mean, give us a little insight, because I'm like, I have to admit, I'm really impressed. You blew me away.
Well, that's hard to do, number one. So thank you.
Okay.
There's a couple of different things, Charlie. When you see this kind of thinking that says AI is a monopoly, essentially, AI will lead to a monopoly, and you just see this overarching sweep of a narrative dominating everything. There's a lot of differentiation in each sector. A vertical SaaS company, not the same as a horizontal SaaS company. So, for example, CRM, Salesforce is very different. That's a horizontal SaaS company. Data company, very different. Both those things are being absolutely shot. The marketplace is dealing on emotion. When you see that, and you see how it works, and you also understand there were a lot of things happening simultaneously. So it's not a simple answer like we looked at this data and it hit this support level and it blew through this level and then so on. It was not a technical call, but we looked at three things really. One, what happened is that since 2008, we lost 2 investment banks, but we gained 50 broker dealers.
That's interesting.
Because we call them multi-strats now. Well, they're essentially market makers. I'll call them broker dealers. And then the machine has taken over. Passive indexing has taken over. So I think what made a lot of sense to us last week was that risk limits for multi-strats very tight. Markets started going, by the way, the software sector has been going sideways down for a while now. It just didn't happen last week. It's been a 3-month trend, maybe even a 2-year trend. And, all of a sudden, everything started to hit the fan at the same time. So the narrative was AI is going to eat the world. Then all of a sudden, differentiation between stocks is totally lost. Then we also, as we reported on this show, said,
Right.
In December, gross positions probably very high. High is a lot of money being put to work. Those gross positions pull back. Risk limits set in. People start to pare down their position. What happens? The machines start to take over. That shoots things indiscriminately. And that price movement said to us, this seems overdone. There's a bounce here. And so that was.
I know you and I, we prepare for it. Believe it or not, we do prepare for this. We spend some time, and I said this reminds me of deposit insurance back that led to the stock market crash. You were like, "Oh, don't go there. That's over the top." And
no, you mean the portfolio insurance? Yeah,
portfolio insurance. I'm sorry, and none of our viewers will know, but portfolio insurance was this sort of thing that kicked in the minute certain markers were hit in the S&P and the Dow back in '87 and caused a massive sell-off. And it sounds like it's maybe not the same thing, but it seems analogous. You don't think so?
Well, I think what's analogous is that once, this is our view. I mean, a lot of people may have something
Right.
different to say, but this is our view. Once you had the multi-strategy risk limits set in, the computer said, okay, we can sell indiscriminately and keep going until it meets some kind of buying. And so, your reference to portfolio insurance is a good one, meaning that once something hit, the computer took over and just kept going.
Yes,
Right.
that's what I meant.
And that's really what you're saying. And so in that way, yeah, no, I would agree. Except that it didn't take down the whole market; it took down one sector. Right? And
Although
we've been saying,
Bob, I just got off the phone with a name brand hedge fund manager. You know him and I know him. And he was like, I am shitting bricks because this thing could wipe out like a third of my holding. I mean, these guys are heavily invested in Oracle and all in Salesforce and
oh no, I'm not saying that they won't print a down 5% number for the month. They very well could, right?
No, but the market impact was potentially huge on this. If it was something more than what it was, and it looks like we're obviously hitting a bottom as you predicted.
But there's a lot of hysteria, right? So everybody's feed is dominated by some influencer saying these agents are great. So let's differentiate between what an LLM is and what an agent is, right? Agent does the task. LLM basically does the search, right? Well, more or less. And so the assumption was that, and by the way, we saw this yesterday with Schwab. Oh, there's an AI tax strategy. Boom, let's kill Schwab. And today it's CBRE. There's a real estate services company. Oh, AI is going to kill it. Let's set the record straight very clearly. System of record, proprietary data, and if you have long-term contracts, that's a really significant moat. So the way we look at the world is to say, if you have proprietary data and you're the system of record, really hard to displace you. And by the way, these companies, Salesforce, their earnings are really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like
really good.
Their stock price that's like getting crushed here. I mean, Oracle's not losing.
Right, and
let's face it.
No, so the business isn't losing customers, right? The churn. So the other thing too is you've seen the Anthropic and OpenAI, they're private companies. It's very hard to understand. I would almost bet anything you would see experimental ARR, right? Trial ARR. Like there's going to be such padding of revenue because they're going public. No one knows how much churn. So, a lot of people use multiple AI options.
Right.
Well, do you turn them on? Do you turn them off? Do you use them? How much usage is there? So, in a stock like Workday or a stock like Salesforce, how much usage is there? There's a ton. There's a ton of stickiness, right? So, and then what's the cost? How many full-time employees is it cost? Is it equivalent to Anthropic? And then all the different things you'd have to do. So one of the things I laughed at is that Anthropic actually has a posting for a Salesforce engineer.
Huh.
They haven't even developed Salesforce for themselves.
Yeah, so, I mean they're light years ahead.
That's why I was highly That's why I was.
By the time you can make the good case. By the time they catch up, the Salesforce, the software companies are going to advance their business in different ways using AI as a sort of tool to do that.
So I think it's one of these things, Charlie, where one of the things we've learned over time is that data drives news and news drives markets, and I think this is one of the things where the leverage and deleveraging was the data. And then the AI narrative was the news. And those things married together caused an explosion. And that's why we said what we said.
Well, I thought it was kudos to you, my friend. So, what do you got for us lately now? I mean, You
Well, let's go over what we did last week.
just
Yeah,
because
well,
just because you're killing it, it doesn't mean you have to stop.
no, you know this business. You're only as good as last week, right? I mean,
Yes, yes.
every week is a reset.
Last
We
call, last
expect that.
story.
We
Yes,
understand it.
yes.
Embrace it. Last week we talked about Carlisle. We had a bearish call. The stock was actually up, so we did not get that right, but it was up 6%. We lost basically 6% on that call. But Illumina, which was the DNA sequencing company we said to short, we got that right. It was actually down 10%, so we were up 10%. So net on the week, we're up. This week, we have a diversified medical products company, Baxter International. We actually have a bullish call on Baxter, and that's reporting Thursday morning. We got a bullish call. And then on West Pharmaceutical Services, it's a primary packaging for injectable drugs. So stoppers, seals, vials, auto injectors, et cetera. And we're bullish on that too. So those are our two picks for the week. But we've been on a roll with the picks. We've just been, you know how this business is. You get rolling, and you're in a groove, and your analytics work, and so you stick to it.
And your analytics always work. You had some more insights about the buy side on all this stuff, and maybe
Yeah, so
who might be, who are the winners and losers on this whole notion of the AI taking over the world and destroying maybe some of the biggest companies in the world. I mean, that's what you have to get your hands around. Is AI gonna like immediately destroy some of the biggest companies in the world? Most profitable, still most profitable. And by the way, Oracle is not like a legacy media company that is being slowly disintermediated and maybe fast by by audience churn and moving to other outlets. I mean, their customers are still there essentially. They're not dumping it for any reason.
yeah, I think it goes back to the winners are vertical SaaS
Explain what that
companies.
is. You just give it like a
So
thumbnail.
it's a proprietary niche. You're not across everything.
Right. So they focus on maybe software that involves employment, taxes. I don't know. Right.
Something, right? You have a you have a proprietary data set. So the way we feel about it is that I don't care whether Anthropic comes up with a better, if it's a replacement for a financial analyst, for a paralegal, for whatever it is. You need proprietary data is an input. The input actually will there'll be more demand for input. So if you have a proprietary data set, that's a moat, a real moat.
So you're telling me these software companies are the data are they either have a moat that they won't give away stuff, or they can
Yeah,
charge for it.
they can charge for it, or they have data that's just an absolute necessary input,
Right.
and or they're the system of record. And if you have a 5-year contract, well, that's kind of the grand slam, gold star, triple star for a SaaS company. And to your point earlier, it stands to reason that all these SaaS companies, AI is not a stranger to them. And you have to understand, one of our viewers last week said, will the incumbent, meaning the internal technology departments and businesses, really want to replace what works? And
Yeah,
is it that
that's a
much
great point.
cost effective? And Salesforce for a business like mine it's one full-time employee,
Yeah.
less. So it's not even, it's way less. So I look at that and go, well, why would we ever do that? It's not worth it to us to own it. Now, maybe if it's a $50-100 million spend, this huge client. So a company like Microsoft, for example, why did its stock bounce? Well, they have cloud, they have database management, they have software, et cetera, right? They have a lot of different things up and down, right? Up vertically and across horizontally. They have shelter. And the thinking is in the marketplace, something like SaaS that just basically does more or less everything, enterprise SaaS, that's at risk. But to your point, I think they'll use AI too. They'll figure out how to make their margins better. They'll figure out how to cut costs if it's a thing. And the one thing we don't know truly, because all these companies are private, Ken Griffin said something really great. You
He
spend
often
600.
does.
Yeah, he often does. He's he obviously a genius. He said, you spend $600 billion. Whatever you're selling, it better eat the world. And so at $600 billion, you're saying whatever Anthropic does, whatever OpenAI does, is a monopoly. It better be,
Good point.
right?
And the
So
chances of it is a monopoly. Wow, you're rolling the dice there.
you're rolling the dice, and they're going public, and so you have this massive hype machine, and then there's always the risk of unintended consequences, where you have agents talking to agents, and how do you police that, and then how do you police your own data? And the assumption is that a proprietary data set will be exposed and shared. Now, you know, you don't have to be bad money to understand that you'd never do that, right? You'd never do that. If you have something proprietary, you're never going to permission the rest of the world to see that data. You're just not. You're going to build your own vertical. And so it's very much like the cloud. You're going to have these things that take a while to adopt.
Right.
But the world has just fast forwarded 7 years, literally, of adoption cycle, and said it's happening now, and all these stocks are screwed. And for all the reasons we just stated, it didn't make sense to us, and that's why we said what we said.
And I think you make an excellent case. Do you want to go to my headlines, because
Let's do it.
And by the way,
I can't wait to tee this up, by the way.
this is the X-rated portion of our risk and return. No, that does not mean that Bob will take all Foil's clothes.
No one wants to see
or that we are being produced by Al Goldstein and
or Mia Khalifa or whatever.
Morgan Silver or whatever porn star
No.
you have from the 70s,
we're not.
Linda Lovelace. But I've been doing a lot of reporting on the Super Bowl, on the business side of it, because I wanted to see, when the initial Super Bowl rating came out. As you know, Super Bowls have become cultural events, but also political events, because the NFL has taken a sharp left turn politically. Roger Goodell has embraced the social justice movement, BLM, you name it. And this year, he kind of went what a lot of people think is peak woke by bringing in a halftime act of a very controversial singer, because this singer is very anti-Trump. I mean, in an age where, let's face it, he won the election, whether you like Trump or not. He is channeling much of the anxieties of America, the fact that we have open borders. You can get down the list, particularly on the open borders. Whether he's handled that perfectly well, we could all debate. But clearly, Americans want the borders closed. Bad Bunny is a Puerto Rican rapper who just sings in Spanish, often wearing a dress. That is true. His lyrics are pretty wild in terms of they're explicit. And aside from the sort of progressive nature of what he says, he was at the Grammys who said "ice out." Not exactly, Shakespeare there, but I mean, you get the impression where he's coming from. But so he gave a halftime performance that was, let's just say, living up to what was billed. Where it was all about wasn't the most American centric halftime show.
Charlie,
And
why do
what's
you
that?
think this? Why do you think? So, if you look at the owners of the NFL, right? The Hunts are certainly not. They control one of the most powerful franchises.
Jerry Jones.
Jerry Jones. A lot of the big famous franchises.
And by the way, some of them aren't. Some of them are progressive.
Okay,
So
fair.
point out.
No, the Seahawks are probably in that camp, right? So,
And by the way,
but
and Goodell is progressive. You know anything about Roger Goodell's father was a Rockefeller Republican senator back in the I think the 70s, 60s, and 70s. And Roger Goodell has been increasingly progressive over the years. He has farmed out, from what I understand, the halftime show to Jay-Z.
right.
So you see like a string of rappers grabbing their crotches during the halftime festivities, and there are
Is that?
complaints.
I mean, is that like the worst thing ever? I mean, so what?
Here's the problem, Bob. It's during prime time. I mean, Saturday Night Live, it came on at 11. Sex and the City was on cable, okay?
Right.
But primetime regular TV. And, here are, now from what I understand, they cleaned up the lyrics.
Do you have a copy of the lyrics?
Yes,
of what he
unfortunately, I do.
Would you care to kind of read that into the record, Mr. Gasparino?
Yes, counselor. I mean, I mean, this is not like, the greatest songwriting you're ever going to hear. Who's a great songwriter? I mean, this isn't Paul McCartney, all right? So we're not talking about Let It Be over here. But here's what. Now, we should point out that from what I understand, they cleaned up these lyrics for the on-air thing. But, one of the songs he sings is called Tiri Mi Pregunto. Whatever that means. I don't know. This is one of the problems. This is why the ratings, literally, if you look at not the bullshit that the mainstream media was touting, the greatest, biggest ever. If you look at the ratings, they weren't that great on a lot of measures. If you really understand how ratings work, and they went down precipitously during his performance for obvious reasons. One reason is because you couldn't understand what the fuck he was saying. But anyway, if you want to get a translation of this, and this is the version that's unedited, from what I understand.
Okay.
The song, Tiri Mi Pregunto. Hey, Auntie, ask me if I have a lot of girlfriends. A lot of girlfriends. I'm going to try not to laugh as I go through this. Today I have one, tomorrow I'll have another. But there's no wedding, of course. Okay. Auntie asked me if I have a lot of girlfriends. A lot of girlfriends. Today I have one, tomorrow I'll have another. I'm going to take them all to the VIP. The VIP. Say hi to Auntie. Let's take a selfie. Say cheese. Let the ones I already slept with smile. In a VIP. A VIP. Say hi to Auntie. I love the little alliteration. Say hi to Auntie. This is brilliant. This is poetry emotion.
I mean, you could be a talk house poet with this.
I mean,
you know
this
that?
is like amazing.
It's amazing.
Shakespeare should, this is kind of Shakespearean in a weird way. Like if you were on heroin, but anyway, let's take a selfie. Say cheese. Let those who forgot about me smile. I really like Gabrielis, Patricia's, Nicolas, Sophia's. My girlfriend in kindergarten is Maria. Like we really need to know that. My first love's name was Talia. I have a Colombian who writes me every day, and a Mexican I didn't even know about. Well, that sounds racist to me. I don't know. He's prejudiced against Mexican. What's wrong with this guy? Another one in San Antonio who still loves me, and the ones from PR, Puerto Rico. He's from Puerto Rico. This guy, Bad Bunny, are all mine. A Dominican who is a cutie. One from Barcelona who came by plane and says, my dick is fire. Now, tell me.
Was that on national TV?
I don't think so. I think they cleaned this one up. I think I'm pretty sure they took the dick out. Or maybe not. Maybe they bleeped it. I don't know. But I heard they did clean it up. But, okay. Listen, we can go back into looking at rock and roll. Iconic songs, Love in an Elevator, not exactly the deepest stuff from Aerosmith.
Yeah.
But during a Super Bowl performance, during prime time, this stuff is kind of just rubs me the wrong way. Now, it was obviously in Spanish, so you couldn't understand it unless you translated it. But presumably, they're looking for Spanish people to watch more, people who speak Spanish. and they played over Telemundo. So presumably kids could have listened to some of this stuff, even without the explicit stuff. It's kind of like toxically.
Well, do you
You know what's
think the
funny?
league wants a
The liberal,
franchise in Mexico City? I think the league wants a franchise
yeah,
in Mexico City, maybe in Brazil, and that's what they're trying to do.
maybe, but then that means Spanish kids might, kids that only speak Spanish listen to this. And by the way, it's funny. Listen, watching these liberal women go nuts on Twitter and social media, saying, "Oh, this is great, multiculturalism," forgetting the other half of their progressive agenda, which was toxic masculinity. So
Right.
you're not a toxic. If you want to be crude to women, talk about your conquests. If you explain that in Spanish, you're
It's
okay,
okay.
because that's called that there's some DEI quotient there. Um, that's the hypocrisy. The other thing is the performance itself sucked. He's mumbling half the time, and it clearly was a sort of political agenda here. I mean, his whole notion was America's not one; it's the Americas, and let everybody in that wants to come in and feast off the welfare state here. When it really comes down to it, and I should pay and you should pay, and maybe Bad Bunny should pay. But in any event, the more numbers come in on this, the bigger flop it looks like. Just when you see how it tapers off, how the NFL sort of manipulated some of the numbers, like they weren't comparing apples to apples, like they were going beyond households to do total viewership, which takes into account a lot of stuff that in the past they never took into account before. So there's a lot of stuff here that the game obviously sucked. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean,
It was a boring game.
But the act sucked in many ways, and it's not just. Listen, I'm not a prude. I mean, you want to talk about how big your schlong is, go for it. And it's in one ear out the other. I mean, but I'm not a parent. I don't have kids. Sitting there watching, and what pissed me off was the politicization. I mean, Roger Goodell should not be using his halftime show over FCC airwaves, by the way. Those are public airways, whether you like it or not, whether you're a First Amendment absolutist, which I am, or not. The FCC considers that free television, public airways, which you have there's a fairness doctrine to that. And by the way, some of his antics, he did, for some reason, he keeps grabbing his crotch. I don't know if he's got lice down there there's a lot of weeds around it. Maybe he picked up some something along the way. I don't know.
But I got to tell you something. I hear you. It's the FCC. I hear it's public airwaves. I didn't understand anything. Obviously, I'm not. I've forgotten my high school Spanish, but there's so many other things going on in the world that to make this the focus of debate. Now, it is the world stage, right? Someone for 15 minutes basically has 150 million people, and maybe more than that, 150 million households.
And by the way, you have the right to turn the channel.
Right, you can turn it off. You can you can do what you did. You can go and look at the other show.
It just rubs me the wrong way that the NFL, the fucking NFL, Butkus, Mike Singletary, Walter Payton, Jim Brown. I mean, all the guys I grew up idolizing. You could go down the line, is just getting into politics. I want to see the fucking game. I don't give a shit about ICE agents, and I mean I do, but not during those couple hours. And who the fuck is Roger Goodell to try to change my mind with this moron, the guy that probably can't count to 10, telling me that that we should have open borders. It's just the whole thing just was.
A lot of the Super Bowl acts. A lot of the Super Bowl acts in the past. You said, well, why can't we get something that's like a name brand? And you go, and look, he's an amazingly popular star, but a lot of the folks that performed in the past, they needed the publicity. They were a little bit on the downside of their career. They're getting a little older, and so that's why they did that. And whether it was Springsteen, Rolling Stones, U2, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of different things. Beyonce, even at that point in time, she's been an established star, and maybe they needed a little boost to their career. Right?
I don't think you need to
So
go political. The whole thing with the political
I
stuff.
think
I've been on
that
the
may be your
field.
point.
By the way, Bob, I used to go to every year the Super Bowl, and I have a
I've
friend.
never been.
Once you get there, it's fun. It's hard to get in, and I had a friend that would have a police escort, and that's how he was a significant person in the sports world. And he would get me in, and I would actually be on the field for the kickoff, and I would often be on the field for the Super Bowl, excuse me, for the halftime event. And most people don't pay attention to it when they're in the stadium, but they were usually like elaborate affairs. I mean, I saw Bruno Mars like on the field. I mean, he was good. He was really good. And
He's a
but
great
I saw Madonna on the field one year. I think I saw Katy Perry, and she did one year. These
She
were
was
all
great.
they were good. And I'm just saying that they're all liberals, but they're all kind of like they just sang their songs. Sing your fucking songs. I think Roger Goodell knew what he was doing when he did it, with an assist from Jay-Z. And I got calls into the NFL. We'll see if they return my calls. That's one thing I'm working on. I'm also working on a fake activist play. This is really fascinating, Bob. I've been covering the Warner Brothers Warner Brothers Netflix deal and the attempts by Paramount to upend it. But there was something really interesting that occurred today. I saw that there's an activist who took, and it made like big news in the Journal, that he took a stake, and because he wants to push investors to, he wants to push for the Paramount bid above the Netflix agreed to, saying he likes it better. There's a lot of reasons why to like the Paramount bid better. But I know a lot about this. Paramount, Skydance have been trying to get activist investors involved in this stock to promote their side for a long time, because activist investors always make headlines. So they finally found someone, Ancora Asset Management. Now, I don't know if they actually, I have a call. I'm going to have a call into Ancora soon. I have a call into Paramount, whether they picked Ancora, but I know, I know several major activists who said that they were contacted by bankers representing Paramount to get involved in the stock and push for the Paramount bid over the Netflix bid, and
Right.
they demurred. So one finally comes. Have you noticed the stock on an activist play? That's Paramount's going to see if we can put WBD up, because it's interesting. It's barely up today. Warner Bros. Discovery.
Let's talk about Oracle.
Now, we just want to make this point. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
Warner Bros. Discovery today is up 0.67%. That's like nothing on an activist play. But my point is, they finally found someone to bite here, and it's someone who bought 0.2% of the shares. The activist play in Warner Brothers, they have exactly 3 weeks to make it happen, because in 3 weeks there's going to be a shareholder vote on the deal, and presumably Netflix will win the shareholder vote, barring a higher bid from Warner Bros. I mean, they have to bid up to about a few more bucks. So this is like, what am I missing? It seems like a joke. And if this is the best that the Ellisons have, like kind of a weak activist play and some other accoutrements that they threw in the mix in the last couple of days, they'll pick up the breakup fee, which they said they were picking up anyway, but somehow they're going to pick it up directly, and something called a ticking fee, where if they don't get the immediate regulatory approval, they give shareholders 25 cents a share every month. Boy, that's big bucks. If this is the best they have, this deal is over. Netflix wins. Anyway, let's go to Oracle, because Oracle is incredibly tied into this, because one reason why a lot of people think they haven't put another $2-3 in here is because of Larry Ellison. His stock went down. Oracle stock, he lost $200 billion of his net worth over the last 5 or 6 months. He is the father of David Ellison, who is the CEO of Paramount Skydance. He's also, essentially the kid's partner in this deal. He's been backing up chunks of it. People are wondering why he's not just throwing $2 more dollars in there a share, which would be like, what, 20, 30, maybe, I don't know. No, not 30 billion. It would be like 10 billion or more. Why he's not doing that and just, ending this thing. but he's not for a reason.
Well, you've covered it last week. You said this thing goes to Netflix. It gets tied up in
That's the
regulatory
other thing. That's the
morass
other.
forever.
That's a bigger existential worry than Ancora doing a
So
activist.
maybe the strategy is to wait, right? I mean, you're
Yeah,
not going to fight one of those things without spending a ton of money.
I know.
Forget, we're not talking about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars to take that to the end. So
Well,
there's like, okay, you want to go the headache and figure
Warner
it out and
Brothers has
spend
a
all that money?
plan
Go
if
ahead.
that happens. Listen, they're looking at it this way. If the government says no, first off, they think this deal will be in Netflix's hands in a month. If it is, if the shareholders, because the shareholders look like they're not moving in their direction, just quite the opposite, even with this. Even if they are, okay, then they have to get regulatory approval. Let's just say that doesn't happen. Let's say Netflix has to walk away because it's going to face years and years of regulatory headaches, not just on this deal, but there's a Sherman Act Section 2 investigation likely on, from what I understand, preliminary at least, on the entire business model, that they just don't want to go there. Well, then what happens? So Warner Bros. Will be two companies. Would have spun out their cable properties with most of the debt, and it'll be a standalone studio and streamer with an extra $5.8 billion in a breakup fee from Netflix, which ain't bad, and very little debt. So they could still be sold at some point. Now the stock will go down, obviously, but you see what I'm saying? They believe there's a plan B here, but it all can be circumvented if Paramount just does what everybody logically thinks they're going to do, but they haven't done yet. Is that pay $2 more? The chart you showed there was interesting, and why they're not. I mean, maybe Oracle is an outlier on your thesis that the AI stocks the software stocks have reached bottom, because if you look at that chart, the short interest continues to build. I mean, people think there's something maybe inherently wrong with Oracle, maybe that's different than Salesforce or these others. I mean, do you see anything different here that's maybe more existentially problematic for Oracle than it is for the others?
Well, before we look at this chart, we can let's come back to this chart. Can we pull up the inside the buy side chart, and then we can come back to this? Let's do that. So what we'll explain is the magnitude of the short selling of Oracle versus its own history. And I think that's very instructive. So, guys, and we can pull that up, the inside the buy side chart, and we'll go through that because it's also the entire software sector.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, here we go. Perfect. So here's what this is saying. If you look at this chart, even though the short interest is, called 1.5, right? If you look at it, the history of short interest for Oracle, it's many times higher than its historical average. It's 3 standard deviations above the 1-year average of 1.4%.
Oh.
So it's telling you how intense the short interest conviction is on Oracle.
Much higher than any of these others.
It's high relative to its own history. It's the top in the software sector.
Let me ask you this, Bob. Is there an existential problem with Oracle as opposed to the other ones?
We look at the data. We're not a fundamental analyst on the company, but look, they've issued a lot of debt, and part of this magnitude is hedging. The instruments the debt issuance that are issued, but part of it is there is a conviction that the narrative of AI being a monopoly and a threat, particularly to its database management, right? That's what this is saying. And
I know, but it's saying something more particular to Oracle, I think.
It's saying, well, it's saying something pretty much about everything, above 1.5, right? So, you look at Autobox, Dropbox, Dynatrace. I'm sure if you looked at the AI narrative and at what people think is a threat to these stocks, we don't know every single stock here. That's not our job. Our job is to actually measure stuff like this and see what the data actually says. So you can have things where the average short interest is 1.7, 1.6. And you say, on a absolute basis, does that mean anything? And if you said, well, 1%, does that sound like a lot to you? No, but it actually is. And that's because you have to look at the history and look at the mean and then just see how many standard deviations this number is away from the mean. And that is important. It's important because it's a measure of magnitude and conviction. So the marketplace right now is telling you, hey, maybe there is something wrong. And to your point, why doesn't he spend $10 billion more on upping the ante? Maybe he will. I don't know. But all we're here to say is there's a good portion of professional investors that have a pretty high conviction about Oracle's immediate future, next 90 days, next 180 days. That's what this says.
And by the way, that's the time frame this deal is playing out. It's
that's right. No, that's right. So, by the way, this is right off the Bloomberg terminal. If you're watching, you can access this. It's a great way to understand what does short interest really mean to the stocks that you might cover, because you can do this in any sector, anywhere in the world, for 60,000 securities.
The Bloomberg machine is an amazing invention.
It's an amazing thing, right?
Hats off to Mike Bloomberg for creating it and innovating it throughout the years. It's always gotten better, in my view.
It's always gotten better, and then we can go back to the software, just the short interest comparison, the earlier chart that you pulled up.
Yeah, the Oracle chart.
Yeah, we'll look at the Oracle chart, and you can see the price action versus short interest. And here we go. And you can see the blue line is the price, obviously falling, and the short interest is rising dramatically. So that matches what we were talking about magnitude.
What's interesting is the latest pop in Oracle, which there's been a pop, obviously, because Larry Ellison's net worth has come back. But it corresponded with a pop in the short interest. There's still a negative conviction here.
Yeah, but that's what's really, I think, more to the point is if we can pull up the Battleground, the hedge fund longs and shorts in the software sector, we can look at that, because I think that's the overall overlay of how to look at what's going on. So this is a chart that explains hedge fund long positions and short interest, over the last, let's say, year and change. And you see that the short interest in blue, the hedge fund long position in black, all of a sudden things right where the red circle is, you see a little bump in the short interest, and you see longs, people getting more convicted, right, and increasing their exposure quite a bit. Now there's a de-risking. So we open the show by saying, hey, what are you looking at that told you that the stock market could bounce? You see these lines and you just extrapolate a little bit because you know that they're probably even more severe. It's telling you that it's probably overdone. People pulling back their long, bringing down their exposure. Generally, when that happens, boom. And it's a stock like Oracle where you see an increase in short position dramatically. People reset, they cover as, the stock was down, 30, 40, 50%.
So you think it's coming back?
Yeah.
All right.
You'll see short covering and people start trading the range until things settle out.
We might have to end on that note as a Bob Sloan special predictive note. We'll come back to Oracle in a week from now, and maybe we'll get some more clarity on the.
We'll get some more clarity
on what Bad Bunny said or didn't say. What in any event, it looks like we're getting the hook here. I don't know. Does someone rap me? Am I being rapped on my own show?
I mean, we own the show, for crying out loud. We don't get rapped on our own
I'm
show.
used to being rapped by Fox, but I work for Fox. In any event, we're going to come back to this next week. We're going to come back to the Warner Brothers, Netflix, Paramount soap opera, Bad Bunny, NFL ratings, Oracle, and all things actionable from Bob Sloan and S3 Partners. My name is Charlie Gasparino from Fox News and the New York Post, signing off with Bob Sloan. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.